Hello, everyone. And that was me trying to sneak in a drink of water, not in time. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Donna Edwards, Training and Certification BDM at Amazon Web Services, and I'm super excited to welcome you to our Women in Tech panel live on Twitch tonight. We'll be discussing the value of tech communities and what it's like to work in the tech industry. This panel is one of the value adds for our AWS She Builds CloudU program, which we run to encourage as many women as possible to get excited about working in tech. We have two programs, both completely flexible so that you can study when it works for you and have the support of this awesome community, as well as AWS mentors to help. One of our programs takes you through the cloud practitioner training, so the fundamentals of cloud over 6 weeks, and the other one is for people with a tech background who want to go deeper and become an AWS certified solution architect over 12 weeks. I'll post the links below later in the program, and if you'd like to take a look or register interest for our next program, then please feel free. We'd love to have you. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce this amazing panel of women in tech that I have the privilege of chatting to tonight. Starting with the fabulous Rachael Goodenough. Rachael is based in Brisbane and currently the talent acquisition leader at Telstra Purple. She has 15 years of IT recruitment experience, having worked with a wide range of companies, passionate about finding the very best tech talent. Rachael loves being involved in the community, is on a plethora of committees, and can be regularly found organising a variety of different meetups and conferences. Also a shout out for her latest meetup, Women Who Code Brisbane. Rachael is committed to building a more inclusive world where everyone is welcome. One of my favourite memories of Rach is when she came over to Perth and we ran the Node Girls Learn to Code workshop. 100 women learning to code for the first time, including myself, was an absolutely huge buzz. So welcome, Rach.
Hi, everybody.
Next, we have my favourite ball of energy, Alana Atkinson. Oh my God, Alana, sorry.
That's okay. It's an opportunity to say it's Elena, not Alana.
It's not like I've known you for very long.
I know.
Elena's based in Perth and is an account manager at AWS. In high school, Elena thought tech was boring and didn't give it a second thought apart from opting out. Fast forward to today, and she's working at AWS, super passionate about tech and what it can do for her customers and the community. Far from finding it boring, she recently achieved her AWS Solutions Architect Associate certification and is continually energized by the innovation she sees and is a part of. Elena is an active advocate for the community and for inclusion and diversity. She's a committee member of Women in Technology WA, a not-for-profit and the leading advocate of diversity, inclusion and equity for women in tech in WA. In 2019, Elena created the Whitworth Mini Mentor Program to assist women returning to work, looking to move into tech or upskill those new to the industry. Elena and I have shared many a wine whilst coordinating Whitworth events together over the years. So welcome, Elena.
Thanks, Donna. Really excited to be here.
Our third panel member is the very inspiring Akanksha Malik. Akanksha is a data scientist at Telstra Purple and based in Melbourne. She's a Microsoft AI MVP, but we won't talk about that, and international speaker as well.
We're inclusive.
Sure. In her role at Telstra Purple, she works with clients to help them solve problems by making more informed decisions with their data. Akanksha is a firm believer in diversity and inclusivity and is an avid advocate for women in STEM. Currently, she's also the Network Director of Women Who Code Melbourne. I refer to Akanksha as inspiring because I hired her a few years ago when she moved to Melbourne as a grad, and what she has accomplished in just a few short years and her go-get-em attitude is something we can all learn from and be inspired by. If she is a reflection of our younger generations, then we're pretty lucky. So thank you for joining us, Akanksha.
Thank you for having me. And I swear the possible tears coming along are just from this head cold and not the nice words that Donna keeps going my way. But I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. And sorry you're not feeling well.
No, it's all good.
And last, just because her bio was the longest, so definitely not least, is Nicola Hazell, our Global Inclusive Innovation Lead at AWS based out of Sydney. Nicola is an experienced social innovator and champion of women in leadership. In her role at AWS, Nicola works to join the dots between inclusion, innovation, and digital transformation with AWS customers around the world. helping companies to unlock the power of diversity as a driver of innovation and growth. Pretty cool job. With a career spanning technology and startups, politics, journalism, and civil society, Nicola has worked with a range of organisations, from global tech companies to emerging startups, to design and accelerate new solutions to achieve social impact at scale. Nicola is a passionate contributor to key dialogues on technology and inclusion, having held roles on the OECD's Expert Advisory Group for Digital Transformation, Women at Amazon's Tech Futures Forum, Twitter Australia's Changing the Game project, CBIT Australia's Women in Tech Committee, and the Sydney School for Entrepreneurship Advisory Board. She's also a board director for Australian advocacy group, The Parenthood. A champion of women in tech, Nicola was the founding director of She Starts, a corporate and venture-backed startup accelerator designed specifically for women. Under her leadership, She Starts was named Australasian Accelerator of the Year and attracted the backing of Google for Startups as their flagship global diversity partnership. Nicola also executive produced the award-winning She Starts documentary web series, amplifying the real and raw stories of women founders to audiences around the world. So to say I'm a little bit in awe of Nicola is an understatement, and we are very, very happy to have her join our panel today. Welcome, Nicola.
Oh, thanks for having me, Donna. It's amazing to be in such great company.
Thank you, and so big welcome to all of our panelists. And so I have a few questions that I'd like to kick off with for the panel, but we will go to the chat to select some questions later on. So if you have any questions, please post them in the chat anytime, and I will keep an eye on it, and we will go to some of those questions later. So a multi-part question to start. I'd love to hear about what you wanted to be when you grew up. So did you think you'd be working in the tech industry? And can you tell us a bit more about the different job roles you've had over the years and what you're doing now? And we're going to start with Akanksha.
Yeah, perfect. Oh God, I saw that question earlier on. I was like trying to remember everything. And this is obviously coming from the whole, I haven't been in the industry too long. So I remember I wanted to be a teacher just because I thought writing on a board was like the coolest thing you could do. Like anytime I could get myself onto the board, I was like, yes, a pen and on the board, amazing. But yeah, now I've kind of changed my mind a lot. Definitely wanted to be a doctor at some stage. Like fully was putting in medicine to go into college, ended up doing maths instead. Don't know how that happened, but when I was doing maths, I decided investment banking. I was like, yeah, that's going to be me. I'm going to work in London in a stockbroking firm, like get the money, exactly. But essentially, like, I mean, I think I kept doing all these different things and I tried loads of things in college. And I kind of slowly just started knocking back things of, nope, that's not me. Nope, that is also not me. And I hate saying that I kind of fell into tech, but that's kind of how it happened for me. But yeah, I did everything in Ireland. I grew up in Ireland, went to college in Ireland. It was my family decided to move to Australia. I was here for like 3-month holiday and ended up chatting to Redify, and they were like, yeah, we've got like a consulting position here. We're tech consulting. Come in, we'll teach you everything you want to know. Data science is like a cool new thing. Just come learn. I'm like, sure, but also like they're offering me good money to come basically just learn everything on the job. I was like, I'll take it. This just sounds like a no-brainer. So that's kind of how I ended up where I did. And there's a lot of things of where in college I did like all the data stuff we did, which was very little stuff we did, but the little bit we did, I enjoyed it. And I was like, might as well try more of it. That's kind of how I've ended up where I have.
Awesome. Love it. Thank you. And Nicola, we'll throw to you.
Well, I definitely never saw myself ending up in tech. And it's been a long road before I land here at this stage of my life. When I was growing up, I grew up all over the world. I was in a military family, so we moved across Australia. We lived in the US, a fair bit of traveling. And I was always curious about the world around me and about people. I was also really passionate about communication. I wouldn't have used that word when I was a kid. I would have used stories. I would have said I was going to be an actress. I was going to do something like this. But I loved stories and connecting with people and learning about their stories and using different methods of communication to get those stories through. So I studied journalism and I started out my career as a television journalist. I worked in Canberra at Parliament House for one of the big TV networks, and then moved to Brisbane and kept working on the road as a reporter up there. Before I then made my first jump early on in my career where I skipped over into politics as a press secretary, and I was working for Anna Bligh and the Bligh government in Queensland for many years throughout my 20s as a political advisor. And again, still focused though on stories and community and how we shape society and that message out there about the work you're trying to do. And after when I finished up in politics, I went to work in the nonprofit sector for many years. And that was where I thought I could take the skills I had and apply them to the sort of problems that I wanted to help solve in the world. So it was always around, how do I use the skills I have to solve the problems that I see or that I'm passionate about, or where I think I can make an impact. And it was when I was working in nonprofits, I was working for an organization doing a lot of work at the policy end on the future of work and what it meant for young people through the Foundation for Young Australians at the time. And I was doing all of this work on how do we get our next generation ready for a very different future, a very tech and innovation driven future. And what was abundantly clear was this future is going to leave women out of the picture and the current trajectory that we were heading down. And so that's where 6 years ago, I jumped out of the nonprofit sector into tech and went to work on creating the She Starts Accelerator and building an ecosystem and connecting with and supporting and collaborating with people across the ecosystem in what was really an effort around social change. Technology was the vehicle. Technology is the opportunity for us to change things at a different point in our economy more globally, because tech is no longer one industry, it's every industry. And it's interesting now, you know, in the time since then, I've worked on many projects with different companies. Joined AWS just in the middle of last year, you know, from my home office, joining a global company to be weird and wild ride. But being here now and working with AWS customers around the world, I'm working with customers in many of the industries that I've worked in the past. I'm working with media organizations. We're talking to people across all different industries, and at AWS, our customers represent every industry in that sense. And it's about understanding that intersection for me of how technology and diversity and inclusion come together to build a different future and to make sure that we are really tapping into the potential of all of our population and removing the barriers, the systemic structural barriers that exist for so many in our industry and in every part of our economy. So a very eclectic route into tech for me. Didn't see myself landing here, but it's where the biggest opportunities to solve some really juicy problems are right now, and that's where I am.
Love it. I sense a common thread might be coming across here. Rach, over to you. Tell us about how you ended up here.
Well, I too never thought I would be in tech, and I too actually wanted to be an actress, but just because I'm a blatant, self-promotion attention seeker, so there was nothing morally in there. I just, love being the light of everyone's watching. But I started off my recruitment career. So I've always been in recruitment, landed in it, and was actually working in non-for-profit as well. And I actually just became pretty dismayed around how the system works. And it's just not really there to actually help the people it's supposed to be there to serve. And in that kind of piece, I decided, okay, cool, let's get out into private. Ended up stepping into technology. And I just loved it. I loved the people, I loved the ideas, I loved the products, and I just kept on working for amazing companies until I got here where I am today.
Awesome. Thank you, Rach. And Alana, over to you.
So it's funny, 2 actors and 2 wannabe teachers. I really wanted to be a teacher for most of my childhood, probably till I got to about middle high school. I always thought I'd be a teacher, and specifically year 1 teachers. Because I wanted to kind of help them into school as they first came to school and help kind of kick off their love for learning and things like that. So it's interesting, all of our backgrounds. But yeah, so I wanted to be a teacher. I got to about mid-high school. I've always also had a passion for health and well-being. So I sort of started then steering more towards that side and the sort of upper side of high school. I went to university, or I started a degree in Bachelor of Science in Health Promotion, and I thought I'd kind of go into health promotion or a dietitian or maybe even a physio or something like that. Started the course, enjoyed it, but realised it wasn't really what I wanted to do. So I thought, look, I'll just go get a job, figure out what I want to do that for a while, kind of learn what I want, figure out what I want to do, and then come back to uni when I'm ready. And my first job was as a receptionist for an IT recruitment company, so kind of fell into it as well. I worked my way from a receptionist into a recruitment consultant and loved working in IT, learned so much about the industry, And that's where the passion came from. I was there for about 5 years or so, and then thought, well, this is my first full-time job. I'm an IT recruitment consultant. I haven't really worked anywhere else apart from my high school job at Big W. So I better get out there and kind of see what the rest of the world is like. I went into a role outside of IT. And just, no, I was like, no, I want to get back in. I loved it. So, and I think, again, it's also just that whole passion for learning, that it's always changing and evolving. There's that ability to influence things and make a change and have an impact. So, yeah, I'm hooked in here for now, for good.
Love it. +1 for thinking they were going to be a teacher. And that's 5 for 5 of falling into tech and not thinking we were going to be there as a career. So I think that's a really interesting trend. So next question is, working in tech gets mixed reviews in regards to being a woman in the industry. So I think some of you have touched on this a little bit in your previous answer, but can you tell us what you enjoy about working in the tech industry, what you see as some of the challenges, but also opportunities as a woman in tech? And we'll throw to Rach first.
Yeah, I think what I'm enjoying about tech at the moment is the social change piece. You know, I like that as an industry, we're really working to understand D&I and also understand how we can better the world, obviously depending on which company, but for the most, we're getting quite socially conscious. And I think that's fantastic. So that's why I enjoy tech. But the challenges I'm seeing at the moment for our women in tech, and there are a few, but the one I'm probably specifically seeing a lot of at the moment is around, women and their confidence to have difficult conversations. That confidence piece where, there could be, either some, conscious or subconscious sexism or, uncomfortable conversations, stakeholder management, where they're just not quite confident yet to really kind of have that conversation with them and call it out, just in fear of what if that impacts my job? What if that impacts my promotion? What if, and so these are things where I'm really kind of working to try and help people feel comfortable in that space of saying, this is normal. We can have these conversations. They might not even know their behavior isn't, particularly untoward or whatnot. Maybe they do, and we need to actually do something about it. So that's definitely one of the challenges that I'm trying to look at the moment.
Excellent. Thank you. And Alana, over to you.
So yeah, I kind of touched on it before, but I guess the things that I enjoy and that I love about working in tech, definitely the innovation, the empowerment as well. So something that I love is that it empowers people, and especially women and students as well, to actually, if you're on the technical side, you can build an app and create a business. And for startups that are around us now, they have the opportunity to actually start a business without having to invest much upfront. And we have startups that have talked to us about that all the time, that this wouldn't have been possible for them to do years back. Also the ability to solve problems, so solving things such as diseases using machine learning, the connection piece, so the connection with elderly, the opportunity to reach out to people of all kinds of abilities. There's just so many different angles that tech and the innovation can help with, that I get really excited about it and really passionate about that. Challenges, yeah, similar to what Rach said, definitely inequity is one that still is around. I'm really lucky that I don't, deal with it as much now, just with, working at AWS and the people that I'm around in Wassa, as much as I used to, but definitely there's times that I have been talked over in the past, or my voice hasn't been heard, and I know that is still definitely the case. So, that's why I volunteered for Whitwer. I'm working towards having that, working towards an equitable environment for all. And I guess that also leads on to the opportunity that I feel there's an opportunity right now, especially as women, that we can try and create, and men as well, create that equitable environment, but not only just for gender, but inclusion for all. So for people of all abilities, for people of all genders, for people of all races, etc. We have a really opportune time right now to do that. So I see that as a massive opportunity.
Got goosebumps. Thank you. Akanksha, over to you.
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to remember the question now. God, it's been great listening to other people, but I think I'd echo nearly the same things kind of Alana and Rach have said. I think what I love about being in tech is the accessibility of it all, nearly, which doesn't really, people outside of tech can't see it yet. And that's kind of a key point of where I like talking about tech, where I'm like, well, things are getting much easier to do, and there's so much more low code opportunities. It's that accessibility and the democratization, especially in the data world, where if you think about data scientists, a lot of people still think of data scientist as something that you need a PhD for, go to college for like years, spend your whole life in college, and then maybe you can do some of the things that you need to do, and you need to know all the maths and stuff, which you don't anymore. And things have become so much more accessible, and actually getting that point across to other people and getting everyone involved, and kind of past that barrier that used to exist. I really like that part of tech and all the things that are coming in the low code space. Such a big fan. And yeah, I mean, all the other things about like actually helping people solve problems, those kind of things will always be the key part, which I think the others have already kind of mentioned. So I won't go too much more into that. But yeah, the low code stuff really, really excites me at the moment. And just getting everyone involved in tech and really helping them see that there is a space for them, which leads into the whole challenges within tech, is the fact that people don't think of it as something that they can fit into. They might think it's a cool place to be, but never realize that it's something they can do. And I mean, I see that as my own sister. Like my sister, who is 4 years younger than I am, genuinely was like, I'm not doing data. I don't do maths. Like, I'm not going to be a data scientist. That's all your stuff, like your codey stuff. And the more I force her into it, I'm like, just give one thing a try. And she just won't do it because she's like, no, but that's that. Like, I mean, it's just such boxed out things. And she's done STEM. She's done all the other things that we encourage people to do. But I think a little bit of it is just fact representation isn't still there. And I think, I mean, if you think about challenges, I've definitely been at events where I'm meant to be speaking about something and someone in the audience beforehand will come up, we're chatting, and they're like, oh, so who are you excited to see? Or what are you interested in? And I'm like, oh, I'm actually the speaker. And it's kind of that look of, wait, what? No, that doesn't make sense. I'm like, yeah, well, here we are. There's those challenges, but yeah, I think actually the representation part of it, there are so many women already in tech, and it's amazing. Actually getting those out to the forefront and showing the people that they already exist and they can be someone they look up to and they match up to, is definitely still a challenge, I think.
Yeah, love it. I do remember when you moved over, one of your your shock of, wow, like, where are the women? Like, where are they? And obviously we're going to talk about community next, but yeah, I just remember how shocked you were of the lack of representation here. And the whole role model and the see her, be her piece is definitely so important. Nicola, I've saved you to the end of this one because obviously it's an area that you really specialise in, and some of the commentary that you've spoken to me about before around the systemic barriers and so forth were just really interesting. So love to get your take on this to wrap this question up.
Yeah, sure. Well, I guess, the start of the question is about, what is so great about it, what attracts us to it, right? And for me, it's about the potential for impact at scale. And I see that in large companies and in small tech startups. Right the way along the ecosystem of technology, there's the potential to leverage technology as a vehicle for impact at scale. And whether that is in creating a new business that is solving for a big problem in our society and leveraging technology to enable that to be solved at a much faster pace with a much larger audience around the world, or whether it's in a company like AWS, where because of the scale of our infrastructure and our reach and the speed at which we're able to innovate, when we try and apply those mechanisms to solving global problems and global challenges, the potential for that problem solving to be scaled at large is really, really phenomenal. And that for me is the most exciting thing about working in technology. I think in terms of what are the biggest challenges that exist, everybody on this panel has described their experiences of the lived experience of the challenge of working in technology. And I can speak to the lived experience as a woman who works in this industry. And I can also speak to it from what the research and the evidence that is showing us all around the world are the barriers. And they're not unique to technology, but just as we can have impact at scale, we as an industry are becoming so intrinsically influential in the world that it's also problems at scale. And that's part of the challenge, right? When we're trying to overcome the lack of women in technology, that is a massive global challenge that affects not just tech companies, but all the other companies that are increasingly being driven by their technology teams and divisions. And these are areas of business that have traditionally been so male dominated, particularly in terms of the startup boom and the growth of companies that are very significant large companies like our own, where there hasn't always been that representation. And so changing representation at scale is a slow burn. And that is one of the big challenges, is how do you do that? And also, how do you stay the course when you're doing it? Because it can be heavy to endure that. You might go to many, many, many events and be just the woman in the room and not feel like you're seeing your community around you, because we are slowly working away at how we solve for that representation piece. But for me, the big picture here is it's not just about visibility. It's not just about the numbers. To solve for it is part of the challenge. There's the reality that we face, and then there's how we solve for it. And the challenge is that it's not one silver bullet. It's not just about recruiting more women, finding more women, or even training more women in technical skills and stopping the drop-off of girls in technology classes and computer science degrees that continues to occur, but actually affecting change at the structural and the systemic and the cultural level. That means even if we attract women into this industry, they will leave if they don't have an experience that tells them this is where I belong, this is where I'm valued and respected and making a difference, and where I can see myself continuing to progress up in this organization, in this industry, in this space, because of who I am, not because of having to make myself somebody else. Those are the kind of challenges, but they're huge opportunities if we solve for them. Because again, if we solve for this as an issue in technology, we are going to solve for it en masse across industries. And that could be a game changer, socially, economically, and for the way our society is shaped and influenced, and the voices, the truly diverse voices that we want to bring into the way we're building a world through technology.
Fantastic. Thank you. Very thorough. So pivoting a little, but I do think it's quite related. Everyone on this panel is quite heavily involved in communities. How can being involved in community help your career or your personal development? We're actually going to go straight back to you, Nicola, for this one.
Well, I think when we think about community, for me, it's multifaceted. So community can be, organized organizations, groups within your business. So at AWS and Amazon, we've got affinity groups where you can find people who have a like-minded interest in connecting with people around particular issues, whether it's the women at affinity group, the families at Amazon affinity group, the Black employee network that we have within our organization. There are many, many different groups within our business that allow people to connect at a community level with other people who are interested in or have a shared lived experience, who want to come together and help support each other. And I think there's a real value in that it gives you a sense of the support that you can get when you're not facing into something alone, but also the impact you can have as a collective is so much stronger than when you're trying to sort of eke away at something as an individual. But I also think that we need to think about community beyond the walls of the company that you work in. So for me, I've always found I've gotten a lot of value from being part of organizations and communities and networks broadly, which align with my areas of interest, but also that force me to continue to diversify my insights and perspectives, because you can find yourself in a bubble. And not only is that, not good for the way that we think about and solve for problems, but it also is a huge missed opportunity when you can connect into communities outside of your direct line of work or your organization. You may find that you will learn things that could challenge the way you operate. You might build connections and networks that allow you to identify what the next opportunity might be. So often it's a conversation you have with somebody in an environment that's completely unexpected that leads you to the next big thing you're going to do, or to something that's truly meaningful for you. Honestly, the most important community for me in my life in the last couple of years has been the women in my parents' group, because I have a 2.5-year-old and I wouldn't have survived without that community. But the things I learned from those women as we're trying to figure out how to raise young children in the world today also apply to how I approach my work in ways that I would never have expected. So I think the value of community and of having a diverse range of communities that you're in touch with can't be underestimated.
Yeah, fantastic. Akanksha, seeing you go from zero, new to Australia to 150% community has been really cool. So tell us a bit about your community experience.
Yeah, I think I literally did a talk about this like a week ago. I was like, my whole career has just basically gotten to where it has based on the community and people around me. Whether that's people like yourself and Rach literally forcing me into half the things I ended up doing, or even other people. Genuinely do not doubt the power of people forcing you into things. It's great. It just really works its way out. But I think it's kind of, yeah, Nicola touched on this, right? It's, the community is kind of what you surround yourself with and what you actually really need around yourself. The whole point of you're the average of the people you're like around with is really, really true. And something I've noticed since I've moved. So I think community for me was almost like a lifeline when I moved over, because I knew nobody and I had nothing in terms of a support network or friends or anything really when I moved to Melbourne. So I kind of just started going to things and I was like, well, I have nothing else to do tonight, might as well go do this. And then you start slowly building up friends, especially in Melbourne. Like the community is fairly small, like it's a very big place, but the people you start seeing, you'll start seeing the same kind of people around the different places. And you'll make your friends very quickly. So I think for me, I found my little niche area where I was like, oh, Women Who Code Melbourne. Like this was a nice little place every month that I could go to. And it was the same people as me who were maybe just starting into tech. And I found a lot of people who had the same issues and the problems that I was facing, or just kind of uncomfortable with the same things that I could kind of talk to about. And oh God, I can't even talk about how grateful I am for that. I don't think I would still be in Melbourne had that not happened. I'd probably have moved back to Ireland at this stage. But it's not just that then that, oh, you find the people, those are great, but then also the opportunities that just the community can get to you. Because what you realize is, yes, there are some negatives to being in tech and all these kind of things that do come up. There's also so many positives. The amount of speaking opportunities I've gotten from people in the community that they've kind of seen is like, hey, you should do this because I know this and I saw you doing this, so I think you might be better here as well. Those connections start building really, really quickly, and they are invaluable. The amount of women who have gotten through Women Who Code, we would host our events kind of at a different location every month. Different company would sponsor it. They just got to network with all these different people. And so many people have gotten jobs just by going to an event and being kind of forced to talk to these networking opportunities. So find what you are looking for in a community, like Nicola mentioned, whether that's a parents group that you really need the support at the time, or you just want some friends like I did at the start. There is something out there for you. Meetup is great. There's so many places for you to go to, but definitely find a little niche for yourself.
Yeah, awesome. I must say I was pretty impressed in Melbourne with the amount of companies that were just like throwing money at, you know, these meetups and wanted to sponsor, wanted to host, wanted to be part of it. I think that's been a pretty cool thing to watch shift over the last couple of years. You know, how many companies are now on board with trying to increase diversity and inclusion and they want to help. They just need people to tell them how they can help and how they can do more. Alana, I'd love to hear about your community experience.
Yeah, so Nicola and Ashana covered really, really well. I guess just adding on a couple of points. So one is definitely something that Nicola said previously about being the only woman in the room. So a lot of women in tech in Australia are often always or most of the time the only woman in the room. So I love, like, for example, I'm part of Whitware, as you mentioned before, and I love the fact that, you know, when we get together at networking events, that they see all these other women and they're not the only one there. And even if they never see them again apart from the next, you know, networking event, they know that those women are out there and they're not alone, and they can have those shared experiences and just, yeah, feel like they're not on their own. So I love that piece. Being involved, like, I highly recommend to seek out communities of all different types, and as both have said before, around things that really sit right with you. So it really, you know, it does matter to be around the types of community and types of people that do fit with you. But one thing I've really noticed is being part of a community and being part of a volunteer team is that you really do get exposed to different types of leadership, different types of people that are outside you may never have come across before. So it really, not only does it broaden your network, but it really broadens the diversity of people within your network and adds to your thinking and your learning. So outside of the connection side, I think both actually spoke on this as well, it does expose you to opportunities that you may never have heard of before. It also opens your mind to those opportunities. Before, you may have looked at them in one way, but seeing that other people are doing this, that whole thing of if you can see her, you can be her, but seeing that someone else can do it or someone that's similar to you is doing that, it makes it possible for yourself. You don't always have to see someone to do that, but that does help sometimes as well to think, oh, they're doing that. Oh, maybe it's possible for me. And you can get exposed to that in different types of communities and learn from each other as well. The other thing is around just learning new skills and just things that you would never maybe get a chance to do in your day role. So as you mentioned before, Donna, we did a lot of event planning together, and we were both on the events committee for Whitwer, and that's something that I wouldn't normally have done, but learned so many skills as part of that, and picked up lots of tips and things, and I think tips from working with you as well. So definitely whatever those skills are, there's a whole lot of other skills out there, public speaking, a whole range of different things that you can pick up that you might not pick up in your day job, but will add to your career as well. And the other one that is my absolute why for why I really recommend getting involved in communities and volunteering for a community that fits your passions is that it actually gives so much energy back to you. When you're doing things and contributing to things that are bigger than yourself, it just helps bring so much more energy and passion and meaning to your life as well. So finding again that thing is something that you really care about or that's meaningful for you, it'll give more back to you than you give to it. But definitely passion, skills, connections, and lots of energy as well, motivation.
Love it, thank you. I think one of my most memorable Whitwer events was when there was just one male that attended, and he was, and Pia said to him, how does it feel? Like, I just want you to sit for a minute and look around and then kind of reflect on the fact that most of us women experience that most days working in tech. And it was just such a wow moment, because I don't think a lot of the time, men don't really think about it because they don't experience it like we do.
Yeah, that's right. And I remember being told as well that, we have a lot more men that attend Whitwer events now, which is awesome. But I remember being told once a while back as well that a man walked in, saw he was the only male, and walked straight back out again because it was just too confronting or daunting for him. But like you say, a lot of women have that day in, day out. So, yeah.
And Rach, we've left you to last for this one because I can't even count how many different community things that you're involved with or have been involved with. So definitely keen to hear your stories and perspectives.
Yeah, well, the answers have just been completely on point. I think why I love being involved in community is if we look at the pillars of happiness, purpose is a strong one. And so for me, once I started to get involved in community and I was helping people and I was seeing a difference and I was mentoring and I was coaching, selfishly, I felt amazing. And so for that connection piece, as you're working with people and you're seeing that development, amazing. On the flip of that, though, when I've had some really low days and I've connected in with the community and I've picked up on that energy and that vibe, it recharges. It absolutely recharges. And there's not really an energy like it, I suppose, as well. And it could be my extrovert self being around people and being like, this is amazing and I'm topped up. But I think there's something about being around, majority like-minded people and who are there to connect and to help one another. And you just know that you're with good people and you can relax and listen. But I think the other key piece that Alana mentioned was, seeing people inspirational stories where, someone might stand up and they'll be, talking about all their amazing achievements, and then you understand the history behind it and you're like, oh my gosh, look what they've done. This is amazing. The inspirational people you can meet and then feel inspired to work a little bit harder or push a little bit harder. It's just been an environment that's really helped me to thrive. And that is all back to that see her, be her piece as well. The more we see our communities, the more we see our women, just pushing and, taking those steps out and getting out there and having those connections, having those conversations, supporting one another, the stronger the movement's going to become as well too.
100% agree. All right, so I just have one more question before we throw to audience questions. Keen to talk about leadership and career progression. So what advice do you have for women looking to pivot their careers or job roles or progress their careers in general? And we'll start with Alana this time.
There's so many tips and things that I'm still learning myself as well. But probably if they're looking to pivot into tech, definitely look at starting to upskill, reskill, kind of transfer their skills. There's so many skills, like we've said today, you know, tech is ubiquitous. There's so many, I think it was Nicola that was talking about it, mainly was around, you know, tech, yeah, it's just everywhere. And those skills that you've got currently will translate and will add value and add a unique experience and perspective as well. But looking at where you want to go, doing some research as well into kind of different areas you want to go, talking to people, so reaching out, making connections. Community helps to do that as well, and coming across new people. And something that I found really beneficial is LinkedIn, and following people on LinkedIn that are doing what you want to do, or that are you know, that you admire, and just starting to kind of read their stories, their blogs, you know, other social media as well, but just kind of getting a bit of a feel for the different kinds of activities they're doing, the groups they're in, how they're building those skills. And then I think one of my most important tips is around just leaning in and taking the chance and the opportunity as well. And I guess that ties into surrounding yourself with really good people that see the value in you, because they'll encourage you to do that, but also leaning forward and stepping and taking that opportunity, and trying new things. I could go on forever, but I'll leave space for everyone else because there's so much.
I'm sure they'll appreciate it. Rach, back to you.
I think I'll probably focus on progression. So if people are really looking for a promotion, tell your manager. Don't be kind of shy about it. Don't kind of think, oh, they'll notice me. Tell them and say, I want that next step. And then make it really clear that you want feedback. So if you're delivering something, you're working on something, you know, make it clear that you're like, okay, even if it's 99% perfect, I want to know that other 1% of where it could have improved. Because it's those kind of pieces that will help you. Because the thing is like a lot of people are afraid to give feedback. You know, they want to just kind of say, you did great, you know, it's fantastic. It's an easier conversation. But if you really want to push hard and you do want that next step, just make it really clear that you're after it and that you're not afraid of a bit of constructive feedback as far as your development areas.
Yeah, I love that tip so much. Making it safe for people to give you feedback is just absolute gold. Nicola, anything you'd like to add?
I guess to the question of, you know, how to progress your career or make a pivot and go into something new, particularly in technology, I think some of the critical advice that I've gathered over the years is not chasing the next rung in the ladder, but chasing the space where you can make an impact. And usually when you start doing that, it actually opens up a whole range of opportunities you wouldn't consider elsewhere. I wouldn't have fallen into tech if I had just been focused on what's the logical next step to get more seniority in a particular career, in a particular industry, or in a particular organization. It would have kept me on a single career path, and not the one that really would have allowed me to explore the elasticity of my own mind and my own capacity to make an impact in the world. So by pursuing and understanding the areas where I could see alignment between my skill sets, between my superpowers, if you want to use the term, and between the areas where I really felt that I wanted to focus my energies and my life purpose, that allowed me to come into new opportunities I wouldn't have found myself in otherwise. And it also allowed me to see the lines to articulate for myself, for others to see me in that space. Because again, it's that, how do you find opportunities that are outside of your current zone, is articulating bigger stories than this is my job and this is what I do, but more about these are the skills I bring to my work and these are the areas that I'm driven to make an impact in, and the things that drive me, not just on a day-to-day basis, but throughout my life. And that helps people to identify how you might be able to really make a contribution in their organization or their industry or in a new opportunity for yourself. And the other key thing I would add is find your elevators. Alana sort of touched on this around how you bring people around you who are going to support you, but find those people who elevate you consistently, both in terms of identifying opportunities for you or sponsoring you, but also in terms of helping you to overcome the social conditioning that has occurred to women for centuries. That means we don't always see the things that we can do in front of us. Not because there's anything wrong with us, not because we've got some syndrome or some problem, but because we have been socially conditioned by the society and the structures around us not to necessarily think that that's even possible. And over time, that plays out in the way that we pursue opportunities. So find the people around you who will pull out those layers of social conditioning and enable you to step into the things that you really have the potential to do, and will push hard for you to get there alongside you in spite of different structural barriers that might get in the way along the way. I think that's really critical, to find that community of people who help you remove those barriers.
Yep, so many good points. I've had quite a few men and women sponsors over the years, and it was actually a male sponsor that introduced me and Alana, so would never have met her if it wasn't for him. So very handy to have those in your pocket. Akanksha, over to you. Anything to add?
Yeah, I was literally making notes as I went, because this is kind of the perks of the panel, right? Whatever you forget, someone else will catch up on for you. So like, then the other side is everyone kind of says all the good bits that you had, and I'm like, God damn it, like everyone's just taking all my but I guess no, like, I mean, I look back over everything, I've kind of like take the risks, I think would be my kind of little thing, where I didn't really want to move to the other side of the world away from all my friends and everyone I knew. It was just such a different thing to be doing. Like, it still is. I mean, everyone I went to college with is in Dublin doing kind of the similar enough jobs. There isn't many doing data science. Most of them have stuck to the kind of traditional careers that they wanted out of the degree that we did. To take the risks, obviously within your own parameters of what you're comfortable with, but at the same time, carve your own path. I think Nicola touched on that a little bit. There isn't no logical steps anymore. Like, do what you want, what you're comfortable with. You will find your little place you want to be, and you'll find a little home that you want to have to create. And with tech, that's the other thing of, it's always changing. I don't think there is really a thing of, oh, you're so experienced in X, Y, and Z anymore, because it changes so quickly. And what's cool to do is changing literally every single day. Like, you'll come in and it'll be completely different in about a year's time. So rather than focusing on what you're good at in terms of one specific tech, become good at learning, and then actually market that as towards what you're good at. So, I mean, I see so many people going into jobs and they're like trying to sell themselves. They're like, well, actually, I don't meet these things, but okay, really go into a job and pitch what you are good at. And like, don't focus on the cons. I literally came into this job and I was like, I don't know any of the tech, can't code at all, don't know how to do it. But hey, I can communicate, I can talk to people, and I can learn really quickly. Like, I think I can anyway. If anything, my degree taught me was how to teach myself how to do things. So just focus on your own kind of pros and really pitch those forward and how they can help, whether it's a company you're working for or your own startup, wherever it might be. Focus on your pros, you'll get a lot further, I think. Love it.
I'm a big fan of the strengths-based leadership. So Gallup's strengths-based theory is amazing. And for me, it was a life changer from being really critical and a perfectionist and always kind of going, what should I be better at? Because I'm not excellent at everything, to actually going, you know what, it doesn't matter. I don't need to be good at everything. What are my superpowers? What are my top 5 superpowers? And if I can just be amazing at that, I'm going to have so much more fun. And I'm going to succeed, and it has worked. So big fan. So we're going to throw to some audience questions now. So keep them coming. The first one that I'm going to throw to is, do you aim for a company you want to work for and find your way from there? Or do you find a thing you love doing and go wherever the role suits you? And I think Rach might want to address this one.
Absolutely. So I've actually just got a new role. And the way I actually did it was you can do both also. You can find a company, you can navigate through. But for me, there was an organization that I really wanted to work for, and I've had them earmarked for years. And essentially what I did is they advertised a role, and it was kind of close to what I did, but not exact. And I applied, and when they called, I said, well, look, don't technically fit that, but I could do this, and I do all these things really well. And they were like, okay, great. So then in a couple of months, when that opportunity became available, off I went. So I think, it's really good to understand and know where you want to work, have that list, and then start connecting with the people who are in that company as far as recruitment, as far as line managers, If there's certain communities where you know that also, that organisation tends to sponsor or show up, start connecting in with them so they know who you are. And then you just roll on in, off you go. On the flip of that, though, if you find something you love doing and, go wherever the role suits you, absolutely. Like, there's just so many options. Working in talent acquisition, love technology. So for me, if it wasn't for this particular company, I'd be looking for other organizations which just align to my values. I'd be making sure that it's ticking the boxes as far as diversity, as far as social conscience, as far as interesting work, as far as the amazing people. So I think, you can look at both.
Awesome. And Akanksha, did you want to add anything to that one?
Yeah, I think I've learned so much over the last 2 years working where I'm like, oh, this is actually what I value and not what I thought I did before I ever started working a full-time job. In college, I was very used to having that, 14-hour days of constantly working and just trying to do all the things, right? And you're used to that life. So I'm like, I expected work to just be like that. And I was like, well, I'll go in and it'll just be crazy hours. It's kind of what you hear. And I'm like, yep, that'll be what I think I want. Super, super glad I ended up working at Redify, who really value that work-life balance. And I think over the last 2 years, especially when you're getting into the industry or moving jobs or whatever else it might be, if you are not too sure what you value, you're like, oh, I think that's what it is, try and definitely find out what you value in a job. I value the culture, the work-life balance, the trust that the company puts into me in terms of, hey, we know you'll get the job done, go do it. We don't want to sit here and make sure that you're doing 9 to 5. You haven't taken a minute over your hour lunch or whatever it is. And I wouldn't have never known those are the things I valued had I not kind of fallen into a perfect cultured place where I'm like, this is great. Is this really what it's meant to be like? And if you've never had that or you don't know that it exists, that's not a problem because community exists where there's people around to tell you about all the different experiences that they've had and what they have gotten to know. So I think for me, companies are great to go aim for. It's like, I want to work in the big ones because this is what the kind of work they do. But then actually look at what your own life is and how will that fit into your life. And that's become so much bigger for me than any of the brand names ever used to be. So then, that is, I don't think people talk about that enough. And you can definitely find out what you value just by talking to other people and seeing how they've actually experienced different parts of the industry for themselves.
And I think just quickly, sorry, Donna, I was just going to say, just to add to that, what they've both commented on, I think also just the value of, your experience or what skills you need to get to that place or to that company or that role. Like where are you here now and what kind of skills would you need to be valuable to that company? But also where does that sort of fit and add value to the industry, like Nicola was talking to before as well, like Rach was talking to before, as well as Akanksha around your own values as well. So kind of matching those three, the industry values and what's valuable to the market, what kind of skills and value to that company, as well as what's valuable to yourself. And if you focus on that in addition to looking at, working towards that company, you'll either end up at that company or you'll end up with something better that's more suited to you as well. So I think maybe a combination of both.
Love it. There was another question around asking what sponsors were, which was a good question. So I guess we refer to sponsor as, it said, was it a mentor or a coach? It's kind of somebody who is going to be your advocate. So they advocate on your behalf. If there's a career opportunity, they're going to say, hey, have you thought about Donna or have you thought about Rach? So they're really advocating. They're looking for opportunities on your behalf and they're kind of helping you on your career journey generally. So they can be a mentor and a coach as well, but sometimes they are just an advocate, and that's what I would call a sponsor. And following up to that question, there was a question around how men can help, I guess, and how men can make space on this diversity and inclusion journey and equality journey, noting the fact that, there are some groups that have a lot of women-only events and men aren't invited. I know that's not the case with Whitwell. With Whitwell, we actually invite, it's for men and for women, but it is aimed at women and diversity. So I guess the question is around, how can men support us on this journey more? My first comment on that would be the sponsor piece. So I think it's really important we can't get diversity and equality without men being absolutely just as much part of the program as we are. We all have to work together for inclusive and equal environments. So, you know, men can be sponsors for women, and it can be a lot more valuable than sometimes having a woman as a sponsor. So that would be one of my kind of quick points before I throw it open to our panel. Rach, did you have anything you wanted to add on that one?
Yeah, and I think maybe thinking about the women-only events, not so much as it being that it's excluding men, but it's actually just for women to feel safe. So, you know, previously Women Who Code, for example, when we've run different events and it had, you know, and we kind of said, look, you can absolutely bring, you know, a partner or a colleague or a friend along, no problems whatsoever. But it can impact some of the other people who are there, and it can impact how they feel, how safe they feel in the event. So if we are, you know, looking at having these communities where we're trying to build up women's confidence, the first step is safety. So I'd say like it's, yeah, so just think about it less as that we're excluding, but more we're just trying to create a safe space for everyone. So that way we can get to mixed and, you know, equitable events. You know, that's ultimately where we want to get to as well. That's the long goal.
I would add to that too, that there's a real, for any community, whether we're talking about women or people who are underrepresented in different areas of our society, there is real value in having the chance to come together with others with a shared lived experience. And I think that that's a really important component for a lot of work that is done specifically about bringing women together in industries where they have a shared lived experience, where they're used to being underrepresented or they're facing common challenges, so that together they can share that, learn from each other, and have that sense of solidarity, and also be the rising tide that can lift everybody up, right? And I think that is a really important thing to acknowledge and recognize. It's not about being exclusive. It's purely about the shared lived experience and the value of that being a cohort that comes together. There are absolutely other opportunities and efforts that we make to ensure that we're working together, that as a community as a whole, that men, women are coming together to work on gender equality, because we absolutely can't solve for it if it's just pushing from the outside all the time when men are still in the dominant positions of power. So the question, absolutely, sponsorship is a really valuable mechanism that individual men can take on to identify the role they can play in ensuring that incredible women continue to get opportunities and aren't overlooked because of unconscious bias, because of systemic and structural barriers that exist. But I think also something that men can do, and frankly that all of us can do, is to continue to educate ourselves around the barriers that do exist, and not lean on one simple solution or one simple understanding of what the problem is. You know, the challenges around diversity and inclusion are complex, and they're historic, and they affect people throughout their lives in multiple different ways. And it's not one issue that, if we fix it, is going to solve everything. So I think continuing to be on a learning journey, to have curiosity and a willingness to acknowledge there are things that you might get wrong, for all of us is really important if we're actually going to move the needle here. And that's something that men can embrace, is an eagerness to learn about this and to think differently about how their own conditioning might be affecting the way they're showing up, that also affects the way women show up.
And Alana, before we go to the next question, did you want to add?
Yeah, so something I wanted to add, that I think another way that men can create space is by mentoring. So something that's been awesome as part of the Whitwer Mini Mentor program is having men come and mentor women, and that's just sort of a brief session before events. So men and women both, or all genders, I should say, you know, will come up and be mini mentors for that event, and we have at multiple events. As well as just, mentoring, even if it's not an ongoing sort of formal sort of mentoring, but there's ways that I've heard. So, I'll have colleagues that will reach out and ask me, what can I do to, create opportunities or see things differently, or to have that situation handled differently, for example. Things that I love as well. There's a study that Hewlett Packard did a while back, that shows that if a woman sees a job advert, unless she meets all of the criteria, generally speaking, she won't apply for it. Whereas if a man sees that, if he only meets about 60% of the criteria, he'll apply for that, which is fantastic for men. But we need to have more confidence as women, and I'm definitely one of those that unless I meet all of it, I'll be like, oh, I'm not sure. But learning, having those conversations with men to see how they see things differently and learn from their experiences as well, and to start to kind of change that, that view that we have on the world as well, and just learning how to kind of navigate things like that. Men play a really important part in creating space and in companies and in women's minds as well.
Yeah, and just adding creating space in conversation and meetings, I think is such a huge piece that men, I've been in meetings with some amazing men where they've made really conscious efforts when someone said, oh, the woman in the room can take the minutes, and they've said, well, hang on a second, actually, no, I'll take the minutes. Or when, the woman hasn't said anything in a meeting, and one of the men will say, well, actually, I'd love to hear from Donna. So I think men can be really proactive in making sure that everybody in the room is getting a voice, an equal voice. And once again, it's not something that I think men do on purpose, taking up the words in the meeting. But sometimes, women have less confidence, or they don't feel like they can speak up. So the more proactive men can be, the better it is, I think, for everybody. Yeah.
And just to add to that, Donna, I think it's not only just about women. Sometimes it can be about different cultures with that speaking up. So it's even myself being aware of, has everyone had a chance to speak? And it's, not just the women, but men from different cultures as well, because there could be a cultural thing that they kind of hold back as well. So it's for all of us to be aware of those sorts of behaviours. Yeah,
very good point. I've worked with a few developers who are quite introverted, and they generally wouldn't speak up unless you kind of made them speak up or asked them and gave them a really clear opportunity. So fair call. Moving on to another question. How do you find out what skills are needed for a role if it's so new to IT in general? For example, I'm passionate about cloud security, but most companies don't know what they want yet in that space. That's a really great question. Thank you. And Akanksha, you got some thoughts on this one?
I think, and I've kind of seen this happen a little bit, which is kind of why I'm throwing this bit out. Feel free to jump in. Reach out to the people who are already in there doing the things. Find out what they're doing and what's working, and then literally position yourself as someone, hey, I realize you're not doing this yet. These are the kind of things that can help you get up to there, and I can help you do that. I'm getting there too, but we can learn together, and this is the ways I can do it. And I know this will work because I've talked to X, Y, and Z by doing it. And that's where community comes in. Reach out to the people on Twitter. Everyone's really, really receptive usually, wherever it is, LinkedIn, Twitter. Yes, it's a really new industry, but obviously if it's already got a name to it, there's people in there, right? There's people doing something. You can always reach out to them and essentially make a space for yourself by putting yourself in there. It'll take a lot more of a push at the start by actually getting up there and upskilling yourself kind of all alone a little bit. But that is one way of doing it, I think.
Nice. Anybody else want to add any ideas on that one?
Job ads. So just hop on to Seek, look at your cloud roles and just, okay, cool. So they're looking for that particular skill. They're looking for that particular skill. And you'll start to see the trends. So I just kind of keep a bit of an eye online for job ads. And if you're connected in with recruiters, I think you could probably also say, like what trends are they seeing coming up in their space? And they should be able to give you a bit of guidance. Okay, this tech is really hot right now, invest your skills in there. So there's a kind of a few different ways you can try and approach it.
There's also a few different community and government type organisations as well. So I know, for example, there's the WA Cyber Hub that's at ECU, and Edith Cowan University do quite a bit in Perth I'm speaking about, but I'm sure there's the same nationally. They do quite a lot in the security space, so even reaching out to them and to their outreach programs. There's also from a women's point of view, there's the Australian Women's Security Network, which is both in Perth but national as well. So reaching out and connecting with them are a few other ideas that come to mind.
People respond very well to curiosity. So if there's something that you're interested and it's an organization you reach out to, it's an individual on LinkedIn, if you've got simple answerable questions, that's always a really good starting point. And I think if you are reaching out to people who are senior in industry, in new areas and new roles that are growing, and you reach out in a sense of not saying, hey, could I please meet with you? I want to learn more, but actually being even more actionable than that and saying, hi, I'm interested in this. This is what I'm thinking. Would you be open to answering these 3 questions for me? And of course, I'd love to have a conversation if you had time, but giving them the chance to help you in a small way as well as in a large way if they can is a really great approach as well. And people embrace that curiosity if you make it accessible.
Love it. We had another question around the fact that sometimes it's not easy to find the thing that you're good at, and the voice in your head that's telling you that you're not good enough. So any tips around how to conquer that or how to help that, Elena?
One way definitely is to try lots of different things and find different things, and you'll kind of maybe fall onto something you are good at. From that voice in your head, reaching out to people that you trust to see and get feedback from them around, how they see you. Definitely, we're so hard on ourselves, generally speaking. So definitely do that and get that feedback from them. Also start to keep a record of things every time that someone says something great that you've done for them, or good or positive that you've done and that you've helped them, or that you're good in that. We so easily forget all the positive feedback that we receive and quickly and for a long time hang on to that negative feedback. So making sure that you keep that record. So if you are having that time when you doubt yourself, even if it's maybe on your phone, like create an album. I've actually created one called like AA, like my initials, Confidence Boost, and I'm trying to remember to put some little photos and things in there if people give me good feedback, or a time that I did something that was outside of my comfort zone and I did well at it, just to remind me, because we forget all those things so quickly. The other thing is, just looping back to around how people see us differently as well. I heard this awesome story that only a couple of weeks ago about an internal talk that we had, that someone went to go for a job and thought there was no chance that they would have any chance of actually meeting that role, and their husband actually sat down and put in a spreadsheet the job role and everything that they did to meet that criteria. So doing something like that even for yourself, or getting that feedback and then putting it in there around like the sort of areas that you have. One last tip, and then I'll hand over to everyone else. Something, say, for example, if you're looking at speaking and working in speaking skills, look up on YouTube public speakers that are brilliant now and go find them like a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and see the journey that they've come. No one is born amazing at everything and great at everything. And people, like a doctor that's fantastic at one thing and highly skilled as a doctor, is going to have different strengths in something else. So recognizing that, but also just seeing that people do have that journey, and allow yourself those little steps to kind of build your confidence along the way.
Rach, anything you want to add?
Well, you are absolutely good at something. Like we all absolutely do it. Just confidence, hug. But I would say find something that I feel when I things that I'm pretty good at. I really enjoy it. I get energy from it. So I'll be like, okay, great, I'm doing this thing, I'm loving it. And then because I love it, I'll keep doing it and I'll focus on it. So I would say just think about like what gives you energy, what gives you a bit of joy, and what does not work for you as well too. Like, for example, for myself, recruitment covers lots of different areas, but where I get energy, where I get all my good vibes from is posting online, writing a really good article, writing a snappy status. And so I'll almost find that when I want to procrastinate, I'll go to that, something I'm good at, and I'll get a little hit. So just have a little think about like what's the thing that makes your heart feel full.
Love it. Oh, great tips. It's I don't know if anybody else is reading the chat, but everybody's giving each other lots of really great tips and links to different books and websites. It's awesome. I'm going to copy some of these tips for myself. Thanks, everyone. and conference talks you can go and rewatch as well. Amazing. All right. Well, I wanted to throw to, I guess, before we run out of time, a bit of a kind of wrap-up question around, what do you wish you knew 10 years ago? Well, Akanksha, I don't think you'd be about 5 then. So for everybody else, maybe we'll go 3 years for you, Akanksha. What do you wish you knew 10 years ago that would have helped your career and your life? What advice you would have given yourself? And we're going to start with you, Akanksha, because of that.
This is always so tough, I think. But I think the one big thing for me definitely has been kind of forgetting about what people think about you, and honestly moving to a whole new world. Just move to the other side of the world. It's a great one because then you literally don't know anyone who can judge you and you don't care. But it was really big, and it really did hold me back from quite a few things, I think. And moving and then actually finding, I think it was more, you end up choosing who you surround yourself with a little bit more when you have to start fresh. And the people I ended up surrounding myself with just all happened to be really, really good at kind of pushing you to do all the things and make the most of it. Like, I've just set up a podcast, which I can tell you right now, there is no hope of me would have ever done that 3 years ago. But like, yes, selfless, shameless self-promotion. But like, I really would not have done that 3 years ago. Just because it was like, what are people going to say if I'm going around making a podcast? Like, that would have been the thing, and I wouldn't have done it. But I remember saying it like a year ago when I finally started thinking about it, and it's taken a time. But I remember saying it to a friend, and they were like, "Oh my God, that's cool. Why haven't you done it yet?" And then kind of constantly kept bugging me, like, "Why haven't you done it yet?" And I'm like, why have I not done it yet? Like, what am I waiting for? So yeah, I think for me, it's very much kind of making my own path and kind of not thinking about what other people are going to say would be definitely the top one for me.
Fantastic. Love it. And Rach, over to you.
I would love to go back and say to myself that it's okay to make mistakes. The amount of opportunities I held myself back from because I'm like, well, I can't do that, or I won't be able to do it, or once I learned and watched other people get really comfortable with failure, I was like, oh, this is acceptable. And then I just stretched and I felt okay about if I didn't word something correctly, or if I made a decision that wasn't quite right. Like, as long as I was learning from my failures and my mistakes, I've learned that it's now a superpower. So I just wish I could tell earlier Rachel that it's okay.
Awesome. I like that one. I think we can all take that. Alana, what about you?
Yes, I'm always trying to evolve, so lots of things, but I was just thinking then probably one of the key tips, and it sounds a little bit controversial, but this phrase that I heard from Jim Rohn is work harder on yourself than you do on your job. That doesn't mean don't work on your job. I definitely work really, really hard on my job, but definitely put the time in to actually develop who you are as a person. So develop the skills that will, improve you as a person, the way you think, so your mindset, health, whatever those skills are that you need for your job. Working harder on that will definitely make a massive difference. And then a couple of other quick ones are around, definitely just, again, really affirming, like, it makes a massive difference, the value of who you surround yourself with. So making sure earlier, if I could have surrounded myself with more people like you earlier, Donna, that, helped me see things differently and see life a bit differently as well, seeing different perspectives and expecting more of myself. The value of volunteering, definitely, which we've already covered. And then the last one is just reminding myself I wanted to get somewhere so fast all the time, and I still do, but knowing that it is a journey, all your skills add up, it's all kind of building up, you will get there. Everything you're doing is making a difference and counting, so be a little bit patient as well.
Amazing advice. Nicola?
Well, I guess there's a few things that stand out to me when I think back 10 years and what I would have loved to be thinking about at that stage of my career, or to have perhaps had some insight into. One is reflection of what Alana was just saying. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And in fact, in some ways, it's not a marathon, it's a triathlon, because you're going to go from one thing off a bike and suddenly you'll be swimming, and then suddenly you're going to be running, and then maybe you'll be doing that same triathlon, but in a totally different country, like Akanksha's done. And so there's preparing yourself for the fact that it doesn't all have to be achieved right away. I think we do have increasingly in our society sort of this pressure of, I have to have achieved and been all the things early on, because we hero the people who have done this amazing thing very early in their life. And in fact, when you look at the lifetime that you're about to lead and you think about how you build your intent and your purpose and your impact over life, doesn't mean you have to do it all just yet. And sometimes you can simply be somewhere to learn. Sometimes you can simply be in an opportunity, in a role, in a country, in a place to learn and be curious and think about the things that are going to help you grow versus winning, succeeding at the top of your game every minute. And I think that would have been great advice to have had 10 years ago and throughout anyone's life, to keep that sense of grounding, and to slow your pace down and be in where you are at that time. I also think I would have really appreciated the advice around the complexity of life. I think that when you're ambitious in a career sense, it can be very consuming. And there's nothing like the circuit breaker of having a kid to make you realize how much there is in you as a human and in the world around you to explore and be ambitious about. It doesn't actually dampen your ambition in your work to also be ambitious in other areas of your life. But what it does is it builds your ability and your resilience to find peace and happiness and joy in your life that isn't just always assigned to and aligned to whether or not you had a great day at work that day. And so I do think learning about yourself and investing in yourself, as Elena shared, and understanding the complexity of how you can succeed in life beyond just what it says on your LinkedIn profile is really, really important. And I think that's a critical thing for all of us to consistently reflect on at every stage of our life, is how we are achieving the things we want to in the many facets of our life in the world that we're in.
So many good tips. Mine would be kind to yourself, which I think many of you have just touched on. But I ask myself sometimes, would I say that to my friend? Because often the things that we say to ourselves, we would never dream of saying to a friend, because they can be quite mean and awful. So I like that one. Would I say that to my friend? No. So don't say it to yourself. Huge thank you. Shout out to the Women Who Code Melbourne and Brisbane meetups. If you're in Melbourne or Brisbane, and even if you're not, they run virtual events all the time. So jump onto Meetup and sign up and join Women Who Code. Also a shout out to the She Builds program. If you're interested in registering your interest for the next program, Derek has posted the link on the chat, so you can jump on and register. And speaking of Derek, a big shout out to Derek Bingham, our Twitch producer, who's very good, and that amazing video intro that he put together for us. And finally, a huge shout out to this amazing panel for sharing your insights and your time with us tonight. I've thought it was pretty awesome, so thank you so much. And thanks to everybody that has dialed in and has jumped on to watch this. And hopefully we can do more again in the future. And you've all got 10 early minutes back for your evening. So thanks, everyone, and see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.